Morning light. Numbers chapter 7 verse 9. The Kohathites, part 23. The Altar of Incense, part 6. Yesterday we looked at the two rings of the golden altar as the law and the prophets that testify of Christ, the two poles as the Spirit and the truth that carry the ministry of Christ forward through the new creation assembly, and the significance that the poles were removable, inserted when the altar was traveling, and set aside when the camp was at rest. Today we come to the final feature of the incense altar, the blood applied to its horn on the Day of Atonement. And then we stand back and look at the full portrait of Christ that the entire altar was painting. Every day of the year except one, the golden altar was tended in the same way, incense burning morning and evening, fragrance rising before Yahweh, the prayers and worship of the people ascending before His face. But once a year, on the Day of Atonement, something additional happened. The high priest came to the golden altar and applied the blood of the sin offering to all four of its horns. He did not just tend the incense, he brought blood. He placed it on the very horns of the altar, the projections that bore the strength and power of the altar's ministry, and the altar was renewed and cleansed by blood for another year. This speaks of a profound truth. Even the ministry of intercession, even the prayers and worship of God's people requires the covering of atonement. Our prayers are not pure. Our worship is not perfect. Even our best and most sincere acts of intercession carry the stain of the flesh and the imperfection of the fallen creature. We are praying from broken minds, divided hearts, and self-interested souls. We need the prayers we offer to be covered. We need the worship we bring to be cleansed. We need the altar itself to be renewed by blood before the fragrance rising from it can be truly acceptable before a holy God. Hebrews chapter 9 verses 13 to 14 says, "For if the blood of goat and bulls sanctifies for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered Himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God?" The annual blood on the horns of the incense altar was saying the ministry of this altar, including every prayer ever offered through it, is acceptable before God only because of atonement. The new covenant says the same thing in the blood of Christ. He does not merely intercede for us, He also purifies our intercession so that it reaches the Father as something acceptable and heard. Without His past atoning work, our prayers would be unheard. Without His ongoing intercessory work, our prayers would continue to be unheard. The blood on the horns declares that the altar stands because of the atonement, and that every prayer rising from it is received because of Christ. There is a particular tenderness in this detail. The altar that bore the prayers of an imperfect, grumbling, wilderness-walking people was itself renewed by blood every year. God did not grow tired of the altar. He did not set it aside because the people who prayed through it were flawed. He renewed it. He cleansed it. He made a way for it to keep burning year after year, decades after decade, for the entire wilderness journey. And Christ is this renewal for us. Not once a year, but once for all time. His blood does not need to be applied to the altar repeatedly. It was applied at the cross, the four corners, blood from His head, the nails to His hand, and His feet were the four corners, just like the four horns, and the cleansing holds forever. Let us now stand back and see the whole picture together. The golden altar was made of acacia wood, clothed in gold, a human anointed with divine character. It stood closer to the presence of God than any other piece of furniture in the holy place, because Christ's intercession stands at the right hand of the Father, It burnt morning and evening without ceasing because he always lives to make intercession. The incense was a unique and irreplaceable formula that belonged exclusively to Yahweh because He is the one mediator and there is no substitute. The fire came from the altar of sacrifice because all access to God begins and ends at the cross. No strange incense was permitted because there is no salvation without Christ. The crown declared His kingly glory in the ministry of intercession. The four horns declared that His atonement and intercession reach every corner of the earth. The square shape declared the perfect, balanced, complete ministry of a high priest who is holy, innocent, and exalted above the heavens. The two rings declare that the law and the prophets testify of Him. The two removable poles declared the spirit and truth by which His ministry is carried through the new creation assembly, moving when the cloud moves and resting when the cloud rests. And the blood on the horns declared that every prayer, every act of worship, every moment of approach to God is received only because of the atonement of Christ. The Kohathites carried all of this on their shoulders through 40 years of wilderness. The congregation of the New Covenant carries the same ministry today. When we intercede for others, we are carrying the golden altar on our shoulders. When we hold people before the face of God in prayers, as the incense held all the Israel before the face of Yahweh, we are doing the work of the altar. When we come boldly to the throne of grace with our prayers, trusting not in our own goodness, but in the blood of Christ that has covered the horns of the altar, we are standing exactly where the high priest stood. When we draw others into prayer, when we teach others to come to God through Christ and through no other way, we are carrying the incense formula faithfully on our shoulders, not substituting it, not diluting it, not offering strange fire. The golden altar is on our shoulders. Let us carry it well. Prayer. O Yahweh, hear my prayer. Listen to my plea for mercy. In your faithfulness and righteousness, come to my relief. You are the God who receives prayers, not because we are worthy, not because our intercession is pure, but because you gave us an altar, a mediator, and a blood that makes our prayers acceptable before your face. We thank you that Christ does not merely intercede for us, but purifies the very intercession we offer, that our flawed, imperfect, distracted prayers are taken up by the one who always lives at the altar on our behalf and carried to the throne as something fragrant and heard. Forgive us for every day when the altar has gone cold, when we have not burnt the morning incense or the evening incense, when we have let the altar stand untended. Help us to carry this altar faithfully on our shoulders morning and evening, without ceasing, as the incense burnt in the wilderness, without a single day of absence. May our lives rise before you as a fragrant offering through Christ, who is the altar, the fire, the throne, the priest, and the blood that makes it all acceptable. In His holy name, Amen.